Welcome, everybody, to Moonlighting Montana. This week, on a special edition of Moonlighting Montana, we do not have a coach interview, and I shouldn't say it's special, it's more like couldn't get in touch with the right people, but I'm still after you Lewistown coaches to get you on the show. I'm really hoping to get you on there because you guys look awesome. But that being said, what we want to do today is we're going to showcase, spotlight Double A and Class A football as we roll into the playoffs this year. I think we have one more week and then we get into it, and so I kind of want to highlight not only games to watch, teams to watch, but players on those teams to watch. My astute guest will be handling Class AA and I'll be handling Class A, and what that means is that when we get into next week, we'll be doing B and C. And so we're really excited about that. Some great games. And today, we're actually going to be bringing you some news on the Big Sky, some of the college football that's being played in Montana. Keep you guys in the loop with that. And with that being said, we'll just start right off with the scores, and we'll run through those really quick, and then Cody will talk a little bit about Class AA, what we're looking at in the playoffs, and I'll talk a little bit about Class A. Okay, be my guest.
Do you want me to go ahead with AA?
Yeah. Thank you for joining.
49-14. Hellgate lost to Butte 55-0. Bozeman wins the crosstown against Gallatin 38-14. Billings West took care of CMR 27-3. Great Falls High shut out Senior 28-0. And then Helena High beat Big Sky 40-3. And Belgrade, with its first win in Class AA
Let's go!
this year was able to beat Skyview 24-22.
Let's go, Belgrade. Getting in the win column. That's exciting for Belgrade. I know that Skyview's a little bit in the dumps, but I don't care, man. We'll take the W. W's are they're going around, like Jameis Winston says.
Recap AA, is that what you want to do?
I'll go through. You recap it. Tell us what you think about some of those games, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail.
No surprises there, besides the Capital Sentinel score. I was expecting Capital to win, but I did not know that they were going to win by that much and put the whole state on notice.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to what we were talking about last week. Capital High, Helena High this weekend.
Ooh. Let's go. It's going to be electric. I can feel the tingle already.
And what's interesting about that is how this game is going to dictate how the rankings go, because Sentinel's still sitting firmly at 3, I would think. Glacier might be even running for the third best team in the state. But I think Sentinel's got that secured. It's just going to be a matter of how that game turns out. I think Capital's got obviously the number 1 seed, but if they end up losing the Helena High, I think they got at least still got the number 2 seed locked up, being how they played Sentinel this weekend. On top of that, on Helena High, they could somehow stretch out a win against Capital this weekend. I think they'll be locked. That's going to be obviously the championship for the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So, and then it'll be interesting to see in the playoffs how those happen. And I still think there's a strong possibility this coming Friday, we might see again in the playoffs.
Right. And we always do this with the coaches we have on, but I'm going to put this spot on you. Who do you got? The Bruins, freaking Bengals.
Well, like I said, I did not expect Capital to put the schmacking on Sentinel like they did this weekend. I've got Capital. I think they've got the momentum, and I guess the one thing that catches me is Helena High's lost to Great Falls High earlier this year.
I know.
But that just goes to prove it's not the team that's playing well at the beginning of the season, it's the team that's playing well at the end of the season.
Right. And it'll be interesting. And more on that, I'm going to try to record a video during the halftime of that game recapping what I saw in person on Friday night and include that in the next video because I don't want to miss it. If you're in the Helena area, I think people are pretty excited about it. Obviously, we were actually talking about this earlier. We don't actually know they don't release the state playoff schedule to the public. And so we were kind of confused on how they could meet in the championship or if they could. We think they can, and at least that's what I've been told. That's the information I've gathered and we've thought is that they could meet in the state championship. We're hoping that's the case because the city of Helena would very much benefit from some event like that. So fingers crossed on that. But yeah.
Yeah, and the formatting across the playoffs, across state, or playoff football in Montana has changed so much in the last couple of years with realignments, teams moving up to Double A, teams moving up to A, teams moving down.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so really good stuff in Class A football going on as well, and we'll get into it right away. The first game, which no one probably thinks anything of, seeing that Frenchtown beat Stevi, but because Stevi is down, obviously, but Frenchtown's a really good football team, and they only won by 12. So to me, with the sweatshirt that my co-host is wearing here, East Helena Vigilantes play Frenchtown coming up here in a few days, and I don't know. Frenchtown Bronx, they're a good team, but I don't know. Maybe East Helena shocks a few people this week, so I'm hoping. But yeah, Frenchtown wins 25-13. Not as big a statement as I thought. Hamilton absolutely pummels Libby 54-13.
No surprise there.
Yeah. Havre, I don't know anything about Havre, but they have been putting the whoop down on a lot of. Granted, this is Park, and Park's in just a low zone right now. They're struggling, but Havre wins 42-0. Glendive loses 0-42 to Laurel, who's also a really good football team, flying under the radar because of the East stronghold of Billings Central and Fergus. But Laurel's a good football team, and they've only lost 2 games this year. So
champs.
Yeah, and exactly, the culture trickles down, right? It's a trickle-down effect. That's what a lot of teams are hoping to get. Good teams that trickle down for years to come. Miles City 37, Sydney 27, Ronan 21, Corvallis 38, Whitefish 20, Sioux Falls 24. That's a great game. 2 high-ranking, great teams. Now here's the game of the week. Just to let everybody know who doesn't follow us on Instagram, Moonlighting Montana. We had Fergus winning this game, and we might have been a goat show. We might have been people just plucking at anything we could to get a little bit of the rise out of the state. But Fergus ends up coming out on top, 17-7, and I'll tell you what, Billings Central couldn't move. It wasn't just offensive powerhouses on Fergus. It was them defensively dominating the ball. I watched a lot of that game. They just put physical imposition on Billings Central. It was great to see. Fergus is one of those teams too, and not to get too much into it here, but Fergus is one of those teams. They don't have, it's not like the East Helenas of the world or the Belgrades of the world that have these places to pull from. It's its own little community right in the smack middle of Montana, and it's just got a great winning culture in both football and basketball. And I'll sure tell you what, come basketball season, we're going to be talking about that first game, because guess what? Fergus is matched up with none other than Dougie Peoples and Butte Central. First basketball game of the season, a rematch of the state championship, and I'm excited. But Fergus gets the win 17-7. Dylan 51, East Helena 0. Dylan looks strong. My co-host is color commentating the East Helena Vigilante games, and he said they look strong.
You're talking Dylan or East Helena? Dylan looked big. They looked big and fast.
Yep.
I think East Helena obviously was just a little bit outsized. I said this last week, but the East Helena kids, you can tell that, especially with the losing program right now, the kids are not giving up, which is promising to see. You see a lot of losing programs where they tend to give up towards later in the game, especially when you get that continuous clock. But
yeah,
these kids are playing hard every down, trying to make those tackles, trying to make that extra yard even on a 3rd and 9 or something like that. They're trying to get that extra yard. That extra effort's going to go a long ways, especially since a bunch of those kids that are playing are only sophomores.
Right.
So.
Right, and we talked about that earlier, just how that, first senior class isn't always really like a senior class. But anyways, Browning loses 0-54 to Polson. No surprise. Hardin 16, Lockwood 28. Then we go to Class B. Malta 37, Glasgow 6, Shepherd 46, Baker 8, Manhattan 50, Three Forks 6, Loyola 28, Thompson 13, Boulder 48, Columbus 12, Wolf Point 14, Conrad 34, Colstrip 12, Huntley 63. Huntley must be really good. They've been putting up basketball numbers. Now, here's the shocker in Class B. Right below, or before we get into the best game of the week, in my opinion, Townsend loses 27-33, and from every indication of who we've talked to in Class B coaches, whether it's just administration from other Class B schools, Townsend was the team to beat, and all of a sudden we got Big Timber coming out and beating them. So the sheep herders, man, good for them. You spent some time in Big Timber, so you know. And then like I said, game of the week. Wasn't even close. Florence, Big Fork, it was 19-20, and Florence had them dead to rights. Missed a field goal with no time on the clock, hits the crossbar, and bounces out. The game was 13-14 with about 2 minutes left in the game. Florence went on a run, scored. Then Big Fork goes on a run, scores. Then Florence almost returns a kick, gets it down, misses a field goal off the crossbar. It was amazing. If you have NFHS, please check out the VOD on that because it was amazing. But good look for Quinny Peep Show and the Florence Fly High Falcons because that was a good team and they proved themselves that they're still strong.
Yeah,
we needed that.
I think many people would have said that wouldn't have expected that score out of Florence. They still are the defending champions, and so I think it's pretty cool that they were able to. They were right there in the game, and it could have obviously, in a matter of inches, could have went one way or the other. So that's good for those kids, Quinn's kids up there, because this is a game that they know they almost had. So if they do run into each other again, they know they have the capability of beating them. So
spread offense coming through, like Quinn said. Eureka 48, Anaconda 14, and Red Lodge 42, Roundup 0. Then we get into Class C, and I'm going to run through this quick because we got lots of games. Plentycoo 30, Lodgegrass 54, Centerville 26, Roy 44, Sunburst 7, Power 48, West Yellowstone 20, White Sulphur 28, Hot Springs 63, Lima 12, Heartbutte 7, North Star 40, Bainville 14, Webo 55, Tri-City 26, Stanford 28, Superior 56, Darby 20. Shout out J-Mac. Shield 0, Custer 41, Sealy 0, Flint Creek 62, Deer Lodge 0, Sims 51, Reed Point 19, Frongburg 32, Sheridan 21, Lone Peak 44, Box Elder 25, Valier 57, and Victor Fighting Pirates 70, Troy 52. Way to go, Victor. Way to pour it on them down there in Troy. Joliet 56, Park City 6, Savage 41, Jordan 12, Gardner 13, Twin Bridges 52, Fort Benton 40, Shelby 20, Cutbank 0, Fairfield 7, Poplar 22, Circle 63, Charlotte 54, Plains 20, Cascade 38, and Ennis 44. Shout out Mike Speck, continuing the winning streak. You promised me, brother, you're going to win, so you get some home playoff games, and I get to come watch you, right? And then I didn't get the Fairview. Fairview won 60-12 against Ekalaka. That was the game that I picked on Instagram and picked Fairview to win, honestly, because I didn't know anything about it, so it forced me to watch a little bit more about Eastern Conference football, and Fairview absolutely put the smack down. They're kind of one of those teams, too. It's a winning culture that's trickled down over generations, and they continue to be good, so they put the smack down on Ekalaka. Shout out Tucker Taylor getting the forfeit victory. Big Sandy over Great Falls Catholic. Belt 46, Chinook 12, Valley Christian 32, Arlee 74, Bridger 58, Absworthy 6. Didn't get a couple of the scores in Class C. We need some people out in those towns reporting the scores to Max or to ScoreStream so that I can get them on here. It doesn't always happen because you got populations of small people that don't always get onto ScoreStream. So, and then I think my co-host actually has some Big Sky football to talk about.
We can go over Big Sky unless we can do Frontier too.
Frontier, Big Sky, college football in general. New edition.
Yeah, so in the Big Sky Conference, obviously, I was just going to go over some of the standings now. College of Idaho is obviously Rocky Mountain College is right behind them in the conference standings. College of Idaho is sitting at 6-0. Rocky Mountain College 5-1. Carroll's at 4-2. Montana Tech 4-2. Southern Oregon 3-3. Our Montana Western is 2-4. MSU Northern's 0-6, and Eastern Oregon 0-6 in the conference. Kind of not what we were expecting though out of at the beginning of the season. We thought Western was going to be the premier team in the conference. Unfortunately, they've had a couple losses there. I know they've had a couple injuries that have helped or that have contributed to that. But I don't think anybody really thought College of Idaho would be leading this at this time. And Rocky Mountain kind of did live up to all the hype. There was a lot of, I don't think they got the rankings that they did at the beginning of the season, but there was a lot of hype out of Rocky at the beginning of the year. Saying they had a lot of talent. So, in the Big Sky. So I'll go more in depth in the Big Sky. We got a lot we can talk about there. So Montana State obviously with a win 37-14 against Northern Colorado. Idaho State got its first win 40-31. Idaho pulling out the win against University of Montana, gets to take home the cup. So first time since 1999 that they've beaten Montana. Obviously Idaho was a Division I FCS for about 2 decades before. 2 years ago when they moved back into the Big Sky. Weber State 42-7 against Portland State, no surprise there. Sacramento State 52-28, UC Davis 56-27. So on top of that, as far as the Big Sky goes, there's a lot of shuffling around right now, and I think there's a couple teams that absolutely have surprised us going into this year as far as the Big Sky goes and how they've moved their way into the top 5. Sacramento State, that offense is potent. On top of that, with Montana losing, I've seen a lot of comments on the Montana pages. I think they're losing faith too early.
That too.
As we know, as a Bobcat fan, as we know, the Grizz will lose that game early to a team that they shouldn't have lost to, and then all of a sudden, November 21st or wherever it is, that last month of November, they turn it on like that.
Yep.
And so I think I was surprised to see some of the U of M fans kind of falling out over that loss, but it's like never, not to compare Montana to Tom Brady, but it's like when you're winning against Tom Brady, are you really winning until that clock hits 0? No. So U of M fans, as much as it kills me to say it, I wouldn't lose hope because it's all about how well you're playing in November and in December. So, but I will say there is some leverage behind that just because of how packed the Big Sky Conference is right now. You have Montana State at number 2 in the coaches poll at FCS now. Then you have Sac State at number 3, Weber State at number 5, Montana at 7, and then I think you got another. No, but it looks like Eastern Washington fell out of the top 25. Idaho snuck into the 24, obviously with the win against U of M.
Yeah.
Idaho has played some good teams. Outside of not to go too far out of the Big Sky, South Dakota State beating North Dakota State. Taking the number 1 seed. So our top 5 is South Dakota State, Montana State, Sac State, North Dakota State, Weber State. I kind of don't agree with these standings.
Okay.
I think North Dakota State obviously has been the powerhouse for the last decade. I think they're right up there in Alabama when you talk about just dynasties. I think what they've done is actually a little bit more impressive, being that all the championships they've won in the last decade. South Dakota State, North Dakota State. North Dakota State barely loses South Dakota State as the 1 seed. 24-21. I don't think they should drop that low, to be honest. I think everybody knows that. I think North Dakota State fans, I don't think they care because every year North Dakota State is either ranked low or something, and then they just go through every team in the playoffs. So I don't think they should drop that low. I think Montana State needs to show a little more consistency. They've had their games on offense where their offense was consistent. They've had their games on defense, but I've yet to see a first quarter through fourth quarter full complete game.
Yeah.
They let Northern Colorado, a team that they should not have had a problem with, jump out to an early lead. Obviously MSU scored 30 some unanswered points at that point. It was Tommy Malott's return, but I don't think they've proven themselves to be in front of a North Dakota State. North Dakota State's only loss now is to South Dakota State in a close game, and Arizona, a FCS program, Pac-12 school. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with these. I need to see a little more out of MSU, but they're going to get their chance to prove if they're the number 2 seed this weekend, because they do have Weber State that they play this weekend, and a lot of things going on. This weekend is a big weekend for the Big Sky. Can see how things are going to turn out, because Big Sky Conference I always think is the deepest conference in all of FCS. But I think this weekend is going to be a huge weekend regarding how the standings play out. So I want to go in a little depth with MSU. I do think that I think Tommy obviously was out with the injury. I'm sure we all saw the video of him against East Washington about 3 weeks ago, where he got the concussion. It did seem like MSU was kind of coddling a little bit. There wasn't all those design runs we usually see out of MSU. I also think Sean Chambers didn't play as well, or didn't play as much as we thought we were going to see him, and as he has in the past, while Tommy's absence. I almost, and again, this is just as a fan watching the game, I almost think they were prepping for that Weber State game, because Weber State's defense is good, and I kind of foresee them using Chambers a lot against them. So I think they were trying to not give him 20 carries, because I think he's going to get highly used against Weber State, because that's the kind of game it's going to be. Tommy looked great. Most of his carries were off of his own scrambles, but he looked great throwing the ball. Obviously, he had a senior wide receiver, going to space out his name, Willie Patterson, helped him out a lot with his big game, especially coming up with that catch in the end zone that was kind of off. It was it's going to be interesting this weekend to see how those things go. MSU is just, with MSU, I think it's not to just talk as a fan and talk too much about MSU, but I will say I'm fairly impressed with them this year. And shout out Coach Brian Armstrong and the offense line. I think MSU's biggest concern this year was their interior, their offensive line and their defense line. They lost 4 of their 5 starters to either the transfer portal or graduation last year on the offensive line. Right now, I got it right here. So their offensive line right now looks like this, and to be honest, they haven't missed a beat this year. Their starting left tackle is a sophomore. Starting left guard is a sophomore. Center is a sophomore. He is the only Justice Perkins. He's the only returning starter. Right guard is a junior, and left tackle is a sophomore. Think about having those guys. Again, this is what scares me, though. I mean, this is another conversation. The transfer portal scares me. Yeah. The more, it's one of those things. More one of your favorite athletes, especially at the MSU and U of M level, one of those athletes proves themselves, the more likely they are going to hit the transfer portal, and you can't blame the kids to go play in Pac-12, like we saw last year. But that's impressive. Pretty much all underclassmen, with the exception of the one junior. To theoretically, if we don't lose into the transfer portal or injury or something like that, to have that line in 2 years with all that experience, that's going to be a tough offensive line. And I think the same thing goes with the defense. You lost Daniel Hardy last year, and the defensive line is, again, very similar. They all have underclassmen kids that are outplaying their year, all sophomores, and freshmen. I think that's, especially if you want to go beat the NDSUs and the South Dakota States of the world. I mean, you want your interior. That's how North Dakota State's won all these championships. They're big boys and they're pushing people around. You're gonna have, every team's gonna have a fast guy, but if you don't have the big guys that push them around, they don't look that fast because they ain't going anywhere. But yeah, I think that is a promising thing for MSU, being that their offensive line is outplaying what we expected them to play this year. So that's why shout out Brian Armstrong and his recruiting and coaching philosophy because it's been going well for them. So
Yeah, now just keep those boys healthy because we don't need another situation like last year where it felt like everything was against some of those teams going deep into the playoffs, which obviously that's just the code that nobody can crack. If anybody knew how to keep their guys healthy through an entire season, they would do it. And it's just fingers crossed.
Yeah, and people are talking about, is there a quarterback problem or a situation at MSU? And I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah.
I think you have two very reliable starting quarterbacks, and I think they can both be heavily relied on in every game plan. So,
which is what they need because last year
I don't see it as a problem. I think it's a good thing to have. I think more teams wish they had that problem.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can kind of get into just wrapping this episode up into our talking about our A and AA going forward into the playoffs. Very quickly, in the Northeast, we have Lewistown at the head of the Northeast, followed by Havre, Miles City, Sydney, and Glendive. In the Southeast, we got Billings, Central, Laurel, Hardin, Lockwood, Livingston. Northwest, Polson, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, Libby, Ronan, Browning. That's a stacked division, by the way. Same with the Southwest, honestly. Hamilton, Dillon, Frenchtown, Corvallis, East Helena, Stevensville, and Butte Central. But looking even more ahead of that, coming up to these some of these upcoming games. Again, some aren't even posted yet, or actually some were posted but mispost. I'm not 100% sure who Hamilton is playing because it says that Hamilton has Columbia Falls and Polson on score or on max preps, and so not 100% sure on that. If anyone has that information, send it to me. But Billings Central's playing Hardin, Lockwood versus Park, Stevide versus Butte Central, Frenchtown versus East Helena, Glendive versus Sydney, and Fergus versus Miles City. Those are our division games. Not that a whole those are really going to matter. I mean, yeah, not a whole lot of them hold a ton of weight as much as they did last week. But they are division games, so can't sleep on them, especially getting late into the season. Then we got Libby at Corvallis. Like I said, Hamilton's either playing Columbia Falls or Polson. Whoever they're playing, that will be a really good game. Havre versus Laurel. Ronan versus Dillon. Couldn't see who Browning was playing, and I didn't see who Whitefish was playing. Maybe Browning is playing Whitefish. Those two were just not posted. But I just wanted to talk about a couple of guys in A to keep your eye on, because AA gets all this spotlight, right? We hear of the Manu Mellos and the Talon Marshes. Yep. From AA, they're almost the superheroes of football. And some of these smaller divisions don't get enough love. And what I want to shout out and have you guys keep your eyes on going to the playoffs is a couple of guys from the A division that are really putting up great numbers. And first on the list is a kid named Jeff Boyce from Fergus. This Boyce kid is everywhere. He plays the traditional old school Montana style, both sides of the football, right? He's not a specialist. He kind of does everything. He'll play quarterback. They even have a really good quarterback too in Norsley, who's a really good quarterback. But he plays quarterback, running back. He's second in the team in tackles. He has 2.5 sacks leading the team. He has 7 touchdowns, and he has 73 yards per game rushing. He just kind of does it all. And he looks stronger and just flat out better than every player on the football field wherever he's playing. And so please keep your eye out for him. He's an exciting kid to watch. Hamilton, Tyson Bowder, he has 75 yards per game rushing and 13 touchdowns. Dillon, Eli Norse, 82 yards per game receiving. Shout out Norses down there in Dillon. If you're from Dillon or you went to Western, you know who the Norses are. Eli Norse doing a lot of good things. Like I said, 82 yards per game receiving and 9 touchdowns. And then Polson, we've talked about this kid already. Jarrett Wilson, 27 passing touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns, and a QBR of 126.1. The kid can flat out play. He's great. He's throwing to his twin brother, I believe, who's a wide receiver, who's also amazing. And I should have highlighted him too, but Jarrett Wilson gets my highlight in Polson. And then Sioux Falls, we got Cody Schweikert, I believe is how you say it. He has 20 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns, and a QBR of 140. Really big, strong kid, and he throw going right, going left. He rolls out. He's really good. Whitefish is Finn Ridgway, 12 passing touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns, and he is having a remarkable 125 rushing yards per game. And I believe he's playing mostly quarterback. I don't know if they kind of swing him in there at the Wildcat, but those are my guys that you really want to look out for. In A, if you hadn't noticed or no one's told you, some of these other teams, I kind of went with the top 5 teams and just went from there. There's some other teams that definitely have some players to highlight, but the list could go on and on, especially when we get in these lower divisions. But yeah. Go ahead.
I didn't know if that's where you were stopping, so yeah, that's pretty impressive though. 27 passing touchdowns and 13 rushing touchdowns. So
went off.
That's pretty impressive in any league. Those are Tim Tebow numbers. So
those are my man went off. I'm not even sure of the schedule for AA, but because it really all that matters is one game.
Yep.
But if you want to highlight the players, like we just said, those two are going to be playing each other this weekend.
Yep.
So you probably want to highlight that. The kid from Glacier is really good. The kid from, and I wish I knew his name. The kid from Glacier is super talented. Great Falls is kind of just good all around. Sort of that Burgess style where they have a lot of really good players. It's kind of just highlighted all around. But in Class A, we're really focusing on one game and one game only, and that is the Helena versus
Class AA.
Yeah, our Class AA, Helena versus Capital, and the leader in the state for touchdowns scored right now, outside of throwing passing touchdowns, of course, is Manu Mello, and he's also the leader in the state in scoring in general. So he's a junior as well. Kind of does it all. Every time you look at his stats, I think against Big Sky, he had 2 touchdowns that were over 60 yards. So just an incredible kid to watch playing receiver. Obviously, couldn't throw it to himself, so quarterback gets some shout-outs there. But the D end, or does he play interior or is he defensive end, Calvin Marsh?
At least the couple games I've watched, he's been lining up in several different places. So I've seen him in the stand-up at the edge rusher. I've seen him in a 3-point. I've seen him play the nose. So.
Yeah. Well, you got your insights for this week. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for those picks. We usually only just do one per division. Really quick little videos to see who we think we list our games that are going to be barn burners for the week, and then we pick our games on that. Coming next weekend, the hope is no matter who we have on, typically we like to have somebody on, and definitely heard some stuff back from other coaches that just didn't line up this week. Obviously they're focused on stuff right now, so I totally understand. But no matter what, we're going to have a lot to talk about next week, going into it's the playoff time, right? And so be sure to tune in next week. Hope to have the video out on a Monday like we usually do next week, and with a coach's interview. Any closing remarks that you have before we hop off?
I got nothing. Exciting weekend coming up in both the Big Sky and in Class AA football, obviously with Weber State and MSU, and then you got Helena High versus Capital. So there's a lot to watch this weekend.
Yep. But that'll do it for us. Toodaloo. We will catch you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.